So welcome back to the next instalment, I guess, my biographical recollections. I moved out of the Bedminster home I was staying in after 2 years, and they were mostly happy years. Thinking it over now, actually, I think I was probably the cause of the arguments, actually, having had time to dwell on it. I think probably I was a bit too young and immature, actually, for Alan, even though he was fun. I think probably I was probably. I think there was one occasion during our squabbles where the tenancy was in my name, and I actually said I would increase his rent. Can't do that in an argument, I know, and yeah, so that was a bit mean of me. And after he'd been so kind, and anyway, I'm glad we made up, and I was a bit immature then, to be honest, and. But I do think, it was a nice way. It was a nice kind of home for meeting people in, actually. And, it wasn't all debauched drinking and that. Actually, we had a lot of very interesting discussions that I learned about acupuncture there. Fletcher used to give me acupuncture when he said his conditions were I mustn't be stoned or drunk. He always knew. And I actually thought he was a stoner when I saw his Rizzler at his house, but apparently it's for cleaning out flutes. I don't know. But it was me quite an interesting bunch of people there. Lots of students came back. A couple of friends from the cinema where I worked. So it was a nice way, sort of different people. My foster sister, Anna, she visited there. And a number of other people. I used to go over back to Richard's for Sunday lunch every Sunday. Stopped going to church by then. But I did go over for Sunday lunch with him and his mother for some time, and I think they were a bit disturbed to receive a letter one day that had been sent to me at the garage, my mother's garage, scrawled handwriting on it. He does not live in this garage. And I think Joan was a bit concerned for me. I was living in a garage, and for some months. But I did say to her, no, I just stored my things in there. And yes, didn't want her thinking that. But yeah, I suppose, like, I kind of felt like maybe I should have asked Richard and Joan to help. But at the same time, I sort of had felt I'd started off becoming independent and I didn't want to go back. And I sort of felt like, yeah, I didn't want them to sort of know that I had some problems. So, but fortunately, I had this guy Jerry visiting me at the garage. So I met him through Fletcher, and we got on quite well. We both had this love of books and that, and he really encouraged me to actually take up studying again after some years out in work and that. So I'd had 3 or 4 years work experience by that point, and it seemed a good idea to sort of return to studies. Go back to your first love, I suppose, of love of language, and I suppose that's where my studying reignited. I suppose there really it was a very interesting place to live. Actually, he ran a chess league, so he often had junior chess students coming around to sort of participate, and hated playing them. My gosh, it was like being beaten by 12-year-olds. It's how they're so advanced at that young age. I don't know, but I always make sure to give them a game of Jenga though, because then my hand's quite steady. So, but yeah, no, it was very nice. The kids from next door used to come around quite often. It was a very nice kind of congenial, a nice atmosphere. And the parents would sit outside in the wall on a warm summer's evening. We'd have a bit of a chat. Well, maybe not the first year. They used to say, "Gosh, she's so shy," and I was, and yeah, in talking to strangers, I suppose. I suppose I loosened up and was more open when I got to know people. So it depended. I was a bit sort of like I was a bit shy when it came to meeting new people and that. I got to talk to the neighbours and we got on very well, and they were quite happy for their children to visit next door, and that was really nice, and sort of do some child minding with them, and play various games and card games and things, and that was nice. And while I was staying there, I carried on working telecommunications, did a lot of temping work, and it was interesting. Sort of just did short-term things, and I kind of liked that. I found I was quite able to sort of be computer literate and data entry, and while chatting with people, I could follow scripts. I had a sort of nice way of talking to people, so it was okay, and I found the job okay too. It was interesting. It was doing kind of talking to members of the public, and it was nice. I liked doing that actually, and I found a regular part-time job doing that. I worked at London Electric and SWEB in one of their call centres. I did that for 2 years, so it was nice having some continuity there. It wasn't my most interesting subject matter, discussing gas meter numbers and offering people different quotes and giving out information and taking complaints and things. But it was work, and I was able to do it, and I found it was interesting enough, and it allowed me to sort of earn money and sort of pay for me to be sustainable while I was studying. So that was good. And I enrolled in College Green in Bristol, studied my A levels there, doing psychology, English language, and media studies. And completed 2-year course there. It was very interesting. I liked it actually. I liked all my tutors differently, especially my English teacher and my media one as well, both of them. I didn't really make any friends there, to be honest. So I was, I suppose, very shy, and I didn't really engage with that many people. So didn't really make a lot of effort there. But yeah, I guess I still had sort of issues, sort of like socializing. So it was but I did have a regular group of friends that I would see through the Freedom Youth Group still. So we were in contact, and they used to come over to Joey's house, or our house as it was then, and visit quite often, and had quite a lot of parties. That was quite nice, I suppose, and as you do as a student. And I used to go over and visit Mum sometimes when we got on. It depended. It varied a bit over the year or two. But I would go over and visit and help out with shopping and that. And England had a day out in London one occasion, and we got on well for that day actually. And I found him to be quite fun to be around. Well, we had very limited contact really. Neither of us went out of our way to see each other that much. I think there was just that one trip that we had to London. It was quite funny when we went into Howard's actually. All the security cameras were sort of moving and following us around, but it's a really fascinating. I loved looking around there, and the big toy store especially. It was so that we had a nice day out there. It was a strange incident on the way back when some drunks from a pub chased us up a road, throwing coins at us, until we ran back up to Mum's house, and that was a little bit odd. I don't know, still don't know why they did that, and it was a little bit weird. And my relationship with Mum, I suppose, at that point, it's a difficult one, really. I mean, I don't really want to talk a lot about what happened at the foster home. She did keep saying, I knew they'd teach you to hate me and all this. She seemed to think that I would turn up full of ideas about her, and that I don't think I did really. I sort of went with an open mind. I didn't know what to expect, and of course, the first few meetings we got on very well, all of us. I saw them quite occasionally, not that often really. If I kind of neglected to see them the 2 years after, because I suppose I was so wrapped up in sort of socializing and working, and so it didn't have a priority to me then. But then when I lived in Fishponds, I lived nearby them. Sort of, I could walk there in half an hour. I went across a field that took me directly there. So it was easy to pop over there and visit occasionally. I'd go up more often. And I think, she did seem to be quite anxious sometimes, but she was always quite welcoming still. She'd cook a meal, we'd have tea, we'd often watch a film, or sometimes her soap operas. I'd watch Well, we both watched EastEnders actually back then. She watches Coronation Street, Emmerdale. But oh yeah, I sort of did visit sometimes. Sometimes she'd be angry at things. I think her relationship with Glyn perhaps was a little turbulent. I think she made some accusations against him that he'd left some mess around the house. I think there was an incident that happened, but I don't know because I wasn't a witness there to it, where she left the house and she was, quite concerned about his behaviour, and he contacted a doctor, and he said he was concerned about her behaviour actually, and she was admitted to psychiatric ward and that, and I don't know quite what had led up to that actually. I don't really know the circumstances, so I'm not really sure on what happened. She had her concerns, I suppose. Then she said that she left a key with her neighbour, and the neighbour said that he went there and asked for the key and asked not to tell her, and she then, once the neighbour had said this, she then wondered whether he'd had a key cut actually and had access to going in her house or something, and she had these thoughts that when she was in the house alone, that somebody was letting themselves in the house and moving things around the house. And she thought that it might be him and that. And I mean, I don't know. It sounds a bizarre thing, really. And, and whenever she told me about it, I would always say, I mean, look, it seems very unlikely. I don't know him that well, so I don't really, I can't, are you sure you didn't just imagine it? We all have moments like that. And that does happen. And you think you've placed something somewhere and it, you forget, don't you? But she was quite adamant. There was a book placed somewhere, and then it was somewhere else, and then there was something else. There were a number of different things, and I don't doubt that she was frightened. She was very anxious, and but I don't know what that was or why, or whether it was just her imaginations, or whether there was something more to it. Actually, I really don't know. Actually. So, I mean, I visited occasionally there. I know we had some arguments too. In fact, there was one occasion she was quite angry with me, but I think it's a difficult one really, because I did see sometimes that they had a close relationship, her and Glyn. They did have something where they got on quite well. They would chat together, and they would seem quite communicable. They seemed to have an understanding. She cooked meals for him and did the washing for him still, and she obviously allowed him in the house at that time. So I think. I don't know if she really believed those things about him or whether that was later, actually. I don't know really quite what went on. But I suppose I when I saw them to begin with, I kind of, I don't know, I suppose I felt like I suppose I felt a bit jealous sometimes when they were close together, but that I didn't have that relationship with her or anything. But I don't know why. I don't. Well, I do know why. We didn't live together for 16 years. What we're talking about. So I couldn't have expected it to just to began in that. And we didn't really. I don't know. She did seem to have a lot of issues then. Actually, she did seem to be upset about things and that. She said she found some leaflets advertising care homes at her house. She thought that he wanted to put her in a care home and this, and I wasn't sure about any of it. I don't know. I really don't know what happened. I was living at Jerry's house anyway, so I did visit occasionally, but not too often, I suppose. I was kind of busy with studies, but I met a guy through a friend of ours, and we became very close. His actual name was James Dean, and but I called him Dino. That's what he liked to be called. And he was very carefree, a real hippie, very down to earth. We kind of, we both got stoned occasionally. We both sort of like the same sort of music, chilled out a lot. He was doing his studies in English. I was too, so we had a lot in common, and. It was kind of cool. I thought he dressed kind of different and interesting, a bit grungy. he was different. He wore makeup. He was casual and funny, and that was a bit too casual actually, as it turned out, because he did have he even came and told me and said, I've had a one night stand with this person and that person, and a few occasions. And I was quite upset actually about that. I don't like that, and kind of like monogamy really, and kind of upset me, and sort of gave him the cold shoulder really for a while. But we did get on well. I used to go to Bath and visit him and his housemates there, Guardian readers, very left wing, and sort of like kind of very into debating and like chatting about stuff. It's a good time for studying for me then, and sort of meeting lots of different people as you do, sort of house parties. I suppose that's the sort of place. We used to go to little woodlands and take a pallet, and burn it up and have a little fire and a few cans. That would be quite nice. And then with their dog that they had. And I had my own friends from the Freedom Youth that used to come and visit. And Rosanna, my pen pal I'd met from years earlier, she used to come and visit over as well. She got to know Dean as well and some of the other friends. She was a regular visitor to me there, and it was nice to have some continuity. We kept in touch, and we got on really well actually. We were really quite close when we got on, and we went traveling together. But I think that was some years later actually. Just getting ahead of myself now, but perhaps a few years later we went traveling together. We went off to Spain actually, but that's to Europe, but that's some years later. I actually while I was visiting Mum's house, I got to know my grandfather. Funnily enough, I found a letter that he'd written to her many years earlier, and so I thought, well, that's interesting, isn't it? And so I wrote back, got in contact, we exchanged a few letters, and he invited us to go out to his home. He'd retired out there in Spain. He was an expat, moved out there with his wife. Sadly, she died of cancer. Mum had invited him back to the house, come back to good old England, but he wouldn't. Said, I went out there with my wife and I'm not coming back without her. So that's understandably. And so we arranged to go out and visit him. And strangely enough, my biological father wasn't in contact with him. Their relationship had broken down, didn't have any contact at all. So that had ceased. But he was okay with us going out there. At least he didn't say anything if he was concerned. He strangely stayed at home, looked after the cat, babysat the cat. He still visited the house quite often. Despite the divorce and that, Mum was very considerate to him. They had some issues in the past, but she obviously forgave him enough. Still cooked him a dinner when he came round. They were courteous for mine and Glyn's sake, I suppose. So I went to Newport. I got them both passports, got us tickets. I think Mum paid for her and Glyn's, and we all went out to visit Frank, my grandfather. He took us to his wife's grave. That was very sombre, and we had a very nice time with him actually. It was good fun out there really. We really got to know him well. He was a bit eccentric. He went out and tried on every outfit he had, like a catwalk, a fashion parade, and actually Mum still thinks that he had early onset of dementia. I didn't notice anything like that, to be honest, and I don't know. He got a bit irritable at me and Glyn at one point. We played a bit of a trick on him, and it was a bit mean. And I'm sorry that happened, really, but we stood on a hose, and then when he looked in the handle, it sprayed into his face, and he was really angry at that. But that was a bit mean of us, and you do things, don't you? You regret, and that's. Well, anyway, we kind of got on. He took us out, very nice. Told us all about his wife, and he spoke very little about Barry, his son. My dad. We didn't want to press him into why they'd argued. We just, didn't want to go into that. That'd be a delicate issue, perhaps. But in any case, we went out to a restaurant. That was very nice. There was a cafe we went to. We all walked off without paying, without Frank. And then when we realised we didn't go back, but he the next day said he wanted to take us there, so that was a bit. They didn't recognise us, so and yeah, it was quite a nice kind of occasion actually. We went to a fancy restaurant. He wanted to treat us all with a classical piano and us all dressed up. And he was a bit embarrassed because Mum asked for Elvis to be played. She loves rock and roll, and it was a really nice night out actually. And we all sort of got to know each other quite well. And he said, he was very tearful when we left actually, I think. So me and Glyn got on quite well with that occasion. He was quite fun to hang out with. I had quite a laugh. He seemed okay actually. And I thought everything, seemed okay actually at that point. And it was quite a nice holiday. And it was very hot, but we went to a sort of a water park that I later revisited when I went back there with Rosanna. And it was nice to have met my paternal grandfather, and even if it was only a week that we had together, although I went back to revisit years later. It was a nice sort of time for the three of us to bond actually, and I actually feel like we did all get along well actually. So there was an interesting occasion where we were out, the three of us. Frank was there as well, and a guy approached us and said he wanted to take us somewhere about a timeshare holiday. And Frank said, "Don't do it, it's a con." But, we were into it because he said you can get free champagne and all this. And so Frank walked off really annoyed with us. Anyway, we jumped into the car with this travel rep, and he was saying like, "Oh yeah, you've just got to view a presentation." But when we, but what? No, I missed a bit. What actually happened was he said, "We need a picture of your family for the brochure. It needs to be mum and dad and kids having fun, basically." And we're like, "Well, we don't have a dad." So then a man was walking past at that point, and mum's like that. She'll just talk to strangers, she's very spontaneous. She's like, "Oh, do you fancy being a photo shoot and all this?" And he was a good sport, played along with it, and he came along with us too. And in the end, obviously, we didn't want to buy the timeshare, and they actually left us stranded. It's quite far out as well, actually. But we did get a cheap bottle of champagne, so. But yeah, fortunately, the guy said, "Oh well, I'll give you a lift back then," So so he did actually do the dad thing, funnily enough, and it was quite nice of him, I suppose. Wally or something his name was, but yeah, so that was kind of a strange thing. And then there were two gay guys opposite in the next villa to my grandfather's villa, his retirement home. They offered to take us on a night out. Fuengirola was the big city in the nightclubs and that. So we thought, yeah, we'd go out. Frank didn't want to go. He's a bit conservative. It's not his scene really, and so I had to usher Mother past all the X-rated sort of videos because she had no idea she was in a gay club. It was really, she was really shocked. All these men in drag and like all these sort of. I think she probably worked it out at some point, and she was a bit shocked, but I think it changed some of her views on it at that point anyway. And I think it was an interesting holiday actually for all of us, and I think we had a nice time. Frank was very tearful actually when we left, but I didn't get to see him until years later when I revisited. But we carried on exchanging letters at least, so it was nice to sort of be in contact with him and that. But I didn't carry on speaking to Barry. He disappeared, I think, sometime after that. So I only saw him a number of times. And actually, I lived kind of nearby him. He had a little flat, a sort of bedsit nearby me in Fishponds. And I think there was one occasion, like, even when I walked past him, he didn't look up. He was carrying his shopping bags the way back from the supermarket. And I don't know now if he blanked me or if actually he just didn't notice me. I think it's that. So I sort of had to do a second take, but then I looked back and sort of watched him leaving, and I always wish now I'd gone up and like said hello and started a talk or something, but I don't know. I kind of felt like I'd been waiting for him to do that, when I seen him at the house, and so I didn't sort of want to force that if he didn't want to talk to me. But then, considering he disappeared soon after that, I kind of wished now that I had, but I didn't know he was going to leave like that. So Mum and Glyn had had some arguments, as far as I know. I don't know the true extent of them or what had happened between them, really. I think there was a prank that he did that she took exception to. And I think it's probably just a bad place prank, wasn't it? And he pretended to sort of have a gun or something, and she thought it was real and reacted to it and was a bit scared by it, really. And I think there was that. And she told Barry, and he went round there and was a bit concerned. I don't know why he left soon after that. I think maybe, he just didn't want to wash his hands of it, or didn't want anything to do with us, or I don't know why. But I think it's a shame for Glyn, because they had a close... Well, I mean, he visited him regularly for so many years. And I suppose he got no real reason to see his divorced wife. I mean, as much as they tried to be in good terms. But I just kind of think... I felt a bit sad he didn't make more of an effort to want to see me, and why he sort of left at that point. Apparently Glyn sort of turned up to see Mum and said, oh, he's not at his home anymore. He used to go round and visit him there. And he just disappeared without any forwarding address. And he's never been heard from since. So he's never made contact. Or I've done a missing person search some years ago. But after his father deceased, a solicitor tried to contact him. But none of us could find any contact or anything, so for whatever reason, but I didn't think anything of it back then, really. I suppose I didn't have a close connection to him, so I didn't really miss seeing him anyway at that time. And I sort of made a collection of different father figures over the years, I suppose, anyway, people that sort of came in and out of those roles. And Joey was kind of a bit like that in the house. He's quite studious, encouraged me into my studies, making sure I was always up. I was always good with getting food out and sharing food, and his cleaning wasn't as good, I suppose, to be honest. It was a sort of house of men, really, extremely messy. It was like, some people were really disgusted that visited us, to be honest, like slug trails, grime and dirt. I mean, but, we were sort of like focused on work and studying and having a good time. So I think cleaning was quite low on the list of to-dos there. But yeah, I think we kind of got on relatively well. He was very conservative in his views. I tended to be a bit more liberal, but we had a common interest in books. I went to his writing circle a few times. That was very interesting. And we had a few house parties. A few things got a hand, but they were mostly good-natured. People dancing, drinking, and that sort of thing. So it was a sort of happy time in my life, mostly, really. A lot of nice kind of memories from then. Meeting different people. It was sort of really nice occasion, actually. I wouldn't say everything was great then. There were some issues that were still going on. Most of the foster family had moved out of Bristol at this point, so I'd lost contact with seeing them regularly anyway. And I was studying hard for those 2 years in fish ponds, achieved my A-levels. I was very glad about the result of that, actually. So, that went well for me, and I got good enough grades, so that enabled me to go into uni. I suppose that was my next goal, really. Dean and I sort of came to an end, but we remained friends, I suppose. I sort of wasn't happy about having too many partners, and I kind of just was happier just being friends, really. And it was nice just having friendship, really. And I kind of felt I knew I was moving on to a new city anyway, so... And it felt like a really big move, going to a different city, somewhere no one knew me, and it would be a really big change. Mum and Glyn came over to fish ponds for the going away party. That was nice. She was putting makeup on some of the guys there. I know Rosanna was there, Dean, and a few of the other people from Freedom Youth. And so it was really nice. And I chose to go to Brighton, actually. So I was going to go to Canterbury at first. I went there because there was an aunt that I went to stay with while I looked around the uni. But it just seemed a kind of small, sleepy village and not enough happening really to keep me entertained. And I don't know. It was funny enough. I was there the day the Archbishop was ordained, and so there was police presence everywhere. Prince Charles was there, various dignitaries was there. So it was a very interesting sort of weekend to be present actually. And but in the end, I chose Brighton. I just thought, it's got a lot going for it. In terms of languages, it's a good place, right by Europe. There are a lot of German, French, Italian, Spanish speakers. So it's very sort of multicultural, multilingual, and it had a really good nightlife. So that's partly it as well. And yeah, so off I went to Brighton, went to the university there, moved into halls of residence for the first year, and didn't look back really, and sort of had a really nice experience there actually. Made two really good friends who I was very close to. I suppose I was a bit shy in classes, but I sort of got involved as much as I could. It was really nice sharing with 7 other people. I liked the hall setup actually. They had a few big house parties, people of different backgrounds, different races, different classes, different subjects. I liked that, and it was really nice that we all got along fairly well. I wasn't really best friends with any of them, but we were sort of acquainted, and none of us had any serious issues. So I liked it there actually. A couple of people I got on well with my language classes, and I decided to move in with them in the second year. It made sense because we went to the same lectures, so we could get a shared lift together in the mornings, compare notes, So it made sense, really, having a linguist's house in the second year. So that's what I did. The first year, the grades went well. I met a friend there from Bristol, so that was nice, actually. Rosanna came over, I think, to visit me and met my other residents. She got on well and talked to them more than I did in all the months I've been there. She's very sociable, and they were too. And they're very sort of chatty and very nice. And we had a couple of with some really good times there actually. And I met a guy there who's a bit older, and we sort of got on well. And he was nice enough. He was a bit older, but had a sort of relationship, but it sort of fizzled out. And I think it was a bit inappropriate, really. I think he was just a bit too much older, really, than me. But I don't know. I kind of yeah. I don't know. I kind of like being with him as a friend really more. I think that's what it was really, and regret that it started off like being more than that. But as does happen, I suppose. I mean, the second year, the studies went quite well. It was a really nice shared house. I was too dirty apparently, and I was kind of slovenly, and my room was a bit of a state and stunk and. But I suppose it was littered with beer cans and that. But I did study hard, to be honest. Still, so I worked hard for it, and I was glad I did quite well with it, and completed all the course essays and assignments. And I passed the exams, so I think I did quite okay with it. I was on for sort of 2-1 at that point, so that I was relatively happy actually with that, really. It was nice. My housemates I got on okay with. I was very close to my Korean housemate. We had a very good sort of friendship, and the other two I was sort of okay with. So that was nice. And I had 2 other friends I was quite close with. So that was nice. And I was sort of drinking quite a bit in the evenings, but I was able to study quite well. Money was a bit tight. I did a bit of work at a job centre, oddly enough, and cleaning, and turned up there one night when it was all closed off. All the lights were switched off, and I thought, this is a bit weird, isn't it? And I thought I must have got the wrong time for the appointment. And as I walked round the side, the door was open around the corner of it. There was an older woman in there, and she said, "You must be here for the cleaning job." So I ended up cleaning a job centre at some point. Anyway, I didn't do that too long. I didn't fit in with the lessons so easily, but it sort of worked out, and I was able to earn enough to scrape by, and the student loan covered the actual the rent, and I just had to sort of scrape together enough for a few expenses, really. And I didn't spend that much anyway. Just did, so I didn't go out that much, really. I had occasions that I went out, was with this guy Tim, sort of this older friend that we went out to this pub, met a few of his friends, and that was quite nice, really. So it was a really good opportunity meeting people at uni, and had a lovely tutor there, a great librarian, had lots of chats with. I'm sorry that I told her quite a few lies just to make my life sound more interesting than it was. I guess I didn't want to tell her, stories of me being a foster child, and that it just didn't seem that. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of. But anyway, I don't know why I did that, really. I sort of pretended that I was from a gypsy family to her. A bit bizarre, but in any case, and she was really nice. Yeah, she took sympathy on me. Used to sort of take me into a little office. We'd have good chats and have biscuits and tea. And my tutor was very understanding about handing in assignments late sometimes. I did have some issues, but by the second year, I was still getting on fine with it, actually. So I didn't none of the issues with that, weren't that serious at that point anyway. So I returned to Bristol each summer, the home city, returned to Fish Ponds, stayed there with Jerry. So he kept my room open for me, which was really nice of him. So it's good to have somewhere to come back to, I suppose. Unfortunately, Mum sort of, I don't know what was going on with her, really. It's hard to know being away so much, but she did seem to be ill some of the time, but I don't know why. But then again, sometimes she seemed quite well and, quite able to sort of look after herself in the house and going out, socialising, or okay. So I don't really know. I sort of was sort of busy when I came back here, but it was really during my third year there, I think things went off the rails, unfortunately, and that's when I sort of dropped out of university, so I didn't complete the course. And during the third year, it just got off to a really bad start, actually. There was a delay with the student loans company. I didn't have any savings. I turned up there without any money. There was no money to pay any. I didn't have a house arranged. It was just like I don't know what I'm going to do. And so anyway, yeah, I ended up staying. There was a guy that I was staying with, and he put me up for a while, which was kind of him, I suppose. It was nice. But I wasn't really able to sort of like participate in. I didn't even have money to get to classes, actually. And Falmouth, the campus I studied, was 8 miles out of the city centre, so it meant like an 8-mile walk there and then back. So I made it to a few lessons, but it was just a sort of unrealistic. I don't know. Perhaps I could have managed more, but it just. So it led to me being a few weeks behind at the start, really, and that made it sort of difficult. Not impossible, but it meant that I was sort of a bit delayed at that point, sort of getting my accommodation sorted out, getting the studies and where I'm going and all the books I need to get out. And I actually had a lot of library fines because a lot of library books went missing. I couldn't transfer all my things from the house from the previous years over. So I didn't have transport or anything. So I tried to store some things there, and I arranged for someone to go and pick some things up, but the things got lost, and I couldn't pay the fine, so I couldn't take out any books to begin with to study, and it was a real issue. And by the time I sort of got to starting studying, I was 3 weeks behind. So I was playing catch up to begin with then, and I never did sort of properly catch up, really. So I sort of was always sort of chasing my tail, really, then. And as well, I sort of, I suppose, with the environment that I was in there, I was sort of living with people that weren't studying. It was a sort of mixed thing, really. I was living and meeting a lot more people and going out occasionally. I suppose, yeah, I was sort of going out and meeting different people, and so there was that aspect